Off the top, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Diddy, in prison, denied bail, facing federal sex trafficking charges. On Tuesday, prosecutors in the Southern District of New York unsealed an indictment accusing Combs of sex trafficking for over a decade, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Prosecutors cite video evidence of Combs assaulting a woman at a hotel in 2016. That lines up with the publicly reported tape of Combs kicking and dragging his then-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, at a Los Angeles hotel. And that tape is part of the reason why a judge took the extraordinary step of denying bail.
The law says that when a person's facing the charges Sean Combs is facing, the presumption is that he gets locked up pending trial. So the field is automatically tilted in the prosecution's favor. He is looking at a minimum of 15 years behind bars if he's convicted. The prosecutors argued that. And finally, prosecutors argued intensely that Sean Combs is engaged in constant obstruction of justice, intimidating witnesses, bribing witnesses, and that usually strikes a chord with judges when they're considering bail.
Combs put up a $50 million bond, agreed to surrender his passport and take weekly drug tests, all in an attempt to get out on bail. That was denied, in part because the magistrate judge was concerned about witness tampering and obstruction of justice. Combs appealed that decision. He was denied once again, and now his lawyers vow a second appeal. The indictment details some of what investigators found when they raided his home last March, including narcotics and 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Prosecutors say the drugs and oil were used as part of an elaborate and produced sex performance where drugs were used to subdue the victims. Combs faces up to life in prison. And the 58-year-old man who planned an apparent assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump at his golf club in West Palm Beach was in court this week. Ryan Ruth is charged with possession of a gun by a felon and possession of a gun with an obliterated serial number. Ruth was seen fleeing the golf course after a Secret Service agent saw a rifle pointing out of the tree line ahead of where Trump was golfing and fired into the tree line. Ruth made his first appearance in court this week.
He spoke briefly with his public defender before the hearing. He was smiling, he was laughing, he was just chatting with her. He did not seem like he was too nervous about anything that was happening today.
Ruth is due back in court on Monday. He faces over a decade in prison. And by the way, one of the laws that Ruth is charged with breaking is a federal statute banning people who have been convicted of felonies from having a gun. And after the Supreme Court's recent landmark decision in Bruin affirming the right to carry a gun outside your home for the purpose of self-defense, hundreds of gun owners across the country have challenged the felon in possession ban. They argue that it violates the Second Amendment's guarantee to keep and bear arms. In that decision, the Supreme Court instructed lower courts to analyze gun laws like this one against, quote, history and tradition. In one case, a federal appeals court agreed with challengers, ruling that the law is in fact unconstitutional. But in another court, a federal appeals court said that the ban on felons having guns fits within the nation's history and tradition of firearm regulations. And that's regardless of whether that prior felony is a violent crime or not. And the fact that these federal appeals courts have divided on the issue makes it certainly ripe for Supreme Court review.